Once known as the City of Champions, Detroit, Michigan was a meaningful contributing factor to the foundation and the fabrication of the American culture and history. The purpose of this presentation is to reflect Detroit's highs and lows, analyzing and illustrating its historical lifespan. We'll discuss several of the city's historical moments and their impact in the city and on the entire world throughout the years of the 20th century and beyond. The city of Detroit has experienced its ebbs and flows of success over the years, and although Detroit has contributed heavily to the world, it has also experienced a drastic decline in its economy since its glory years starting in the 1900s. This presentation will showcase Detroit's thriving and then declining economy throughout the years, and possibly provoking conversation and thoughts of how a city that was once considered to be the richest in America is now considered to be the poorest. The year was 1896, and Henry Ford had built his first automobile, which was called the quadricycle. The semi car was built at his home in Detroit. After test runs of constructing cars and companies, Henry Ford decided to establish Ford Motor Company in 1903. Henry Ford, William C. Durant, the Dodge brothers, Packard, and Walter Chrysler was considered one of the first class of automotive pioneers in the U.S. Things were going great for the car makers, and for many years the company reported 100% gains. But Ford became known for his futuristic vision to manufacture inexpensive automobiles, all while paying his skilled workers decent and steady wages. By 1918, over half of the cars in America were mainly T model automobiles. The cars were simple, they were simple to drive, and cheap to repair. Ford Motor Company would go on to become one of the largest and most profitable companies in the world. The company became one of the few to survive the Great Depression. The entire decade of the 1930s is considered to be special when it comes to Detroiters. In 1935, the Detroit Lions won the National Football Championship. Also in 1935, the Detroit Tigers won their first World Series, beating the Chicago Cubs. To top it all off, the Red Wings, Detroit National Hockey League, won the Stanley Cup in 1936 and in 1937. This decade of success during these glory years is what led Detroit governor and others to name the City of Champions. Then, in 1941, the infamous 8 Mile Road Wall was built. The barrier served as a practical solution to a monetary problem. The wall stands 6 feet high and 1 foot thick and extends a half a mile. The wall was constructed during that time in order for Caucasians to receive mortgage loans from FHA for housing developments in that area. Today, the 8 Mile Road serves as a tangible line of division and a psychological and cultural boundary for the region. The 8 lane road acts mainly as a divider, separating the city's mainly black urban core residents from the predominantly white upper class residents. The year was 1950, and Detroit's population hits 1.85 million, making it America's fourth largest city. This is mainly because in 1943, Detroit's population grew by 350,000 due to World War II. The defense industries brought in a large number of people making high wages. This was the city of their choice. Assembly lines for automobiles from Ford, Chrysler, Cadillac to Dodge had plants near or on the city limits. Detroit had plants, steel mills, parts depot all around the city. This is where the products built in Detroit would be sorted and then sent out to different organizations. This was operated by automobile industries all across the country. The city became mobile. People in all parts of the city could take the bus, they could take the streetcar, or they could even walk to work. This is how convenient and mobile the city became. And for those who were fortunate enough to afford a car, they would just drive to work. Then in 1959, Berry Gordy Jr. founded Motown Records, better known as Hitsville, USA. Artists like Diana Ross and the Supremes, The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, and who could forget the Jackson 5? They all helped Motown achieve 120 hit singles in the 1960s. This era ushered in a new era of change in the direction of popular music. Then, in 1967, what is now known as the 12th Street Riot began. The riot was the biggest in the United States history. It began in the early mornings of Sunday, July 23rd, 1967. The National Guard and Army were deployed to Detroit, and within 5 days of rioting, 43 people were killed, 467 people were injured, and more than 7,200 people arrested. Also, over 2,000 buildings were destroyed. In 1973, the infamous oil crisis began. It all started when members of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries claimed an oil embargo. The embargo came as a response to the U.S. for supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War. The efforts of President Richard Nixon administration to end the embargo signaled a complex shift in the global financial balance of power to oil producing states. The implementation of the embargo caused an upward spiral in oil pricing, which caused global repercussions. And by the end of the embargo, the prices of oil had rose significantly in the U.S. The gasoline crisis only aided the foreign small fuel efficient cars into getting a foothold in the U.S. market. This began to signal a long crisis period for Detroit's big three automakers. Soon after, gas prices went back down, and the American automakers tried to come back strong, introducing more fuel efficient cars and more appealing advertisements in the 1980s. Many of the U.S. automakers were successful at returning back on top, but they soon began to introduce bigger cars again, minivans, powerful new SUVs, and luxury pickup trucks. Consumers seemed to love them, and small cars were displaced from the top for a while. The only problem for the big three was a trend of fuel efficient cars that had already gained the favor of their conservative crowds. The craze started in 1975 when all import brand sales shot up a record number 15.8%. It wasn't just the Japanese cars, it was now German brands that got a boost in their sales. Consumers seemed to like their small cars but powerful engines. They begin to get a second look. This is when the big three begin to have their hands full. They begin to poorly execute making small cars, which even became devastating to big brands such as Lincoln and Cadillac. The desire to add a fuel efficient car to the showroom floor led to a slew of partnerships like Chrysler and Mitsubishi, Ford and Mazda, GM and Suzuki. By 2009, The big three automakers were brought into focus: General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. With fewer fuel efficient models to offer the consumers, their sales began to decline, and ultimately, Chrysler and GM declared bankruptcy. The Obama administration provides financing and guidance to the automakers through an expedited bankruptcy proceeding. Although Congress refused the automakers' first request of $50 billion, Congress was willing to redirect a $25 billion loan program tied to the development of more fuel efficient vehicles. The automakers then asked for an additional $25 billion to come out of troubled asset debt. The government then created what we now know as the Automobile Industry Financing Program. By 2011, Detroit was hammered by the auto industry's slump. Detroit saw its population drop to 713,000 residents. This was the lowest they had ever seen in over 100 years. Michigan had lost nearly 860,000 jobs since 2000, and its unemployment rate at the time was among the nation's highest. In 2013, Kevin Orr, a Washington based bankruptcy attorney, was hired by the governor of Michigan. He was named the city manager. He began to stop payments on about $18.5 billion worth of debt, putting the city in technical default. He also began to cut pension and health benefits of the retired city workers. After several months of negotiations, Orr was ultimately unable to come to a deal with Detroit's creditors, credit union, and pension board. Orr filed Chapter 9 bankruptcy to protect the city on July 18, 2013, with outstanding financial obligations to more than 100,000 creditors totaling $18.5 billion. Detroit is marked in history as the largest municipal bankruptcy filing and ultimately turning Detroit into the poorest city in America. By 2017, the city of Detroit has gone through a major economic and demographic decline in recent decades. The impact can be seen visibly everywhere. The city's automobile industry has suffered from global competition and has moved much of the remaining product out of Detroit. To top it off, in 2013, the city files the largest municipal bankruptcy case in U.S. history. The city has experienced a drastic economic decline since its glory years of the 1900s. Crime rates are soaring through the city, and some share the blame for the urban decay. Unfortunately, poverty, crime, and urban blight in Detroit continues to be an ongoing problem. The city, once known as the City of Champions, still today has not recovered from its losses.